guys, my name's Tracy Newman. I belong to this channel, which is Sleepy Wisdom. I also have a tarot reading service, which I shall provide the links below for how you can contact me there through the website sleepywisdom.com. And I'm also the Navigator's Tarot on Facebook and on Instagram, which I'll also leave links for those in the description box below as well. So today I'm going to talk about Kundalini Rising symptoms, which appear to be happening more and more now as people begin to awaken on this planet. There is an ascension of the spiritual that is happening right now within a lot of people. And so a lot of ascension symptoms will mimic the Kundalini, or Kundalini symptoms will mimic the ascension symptoms. So about 22 years ago, I had what they call a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, which has been ongoing and extremely full on in the way that it's actually affected me over the years. A lot of people mistakenly believe that a Kundalini rising happens very quickly, suddenly. Well, it does happen very suddenly, but quickly, and it just is like an energy that rises from your sacrum up to the crown chakra and then goes out, and you're completely enlightened and you feel bliss and love and everything. And it's like, well, those experiences are few, and they are not ongoing. They are not. It's not a consistent feeling that you have. Most of the Kundalini symptoms that I have had over the years have been extreme and not pleasant a lot of the time. There have been near-death experiences that I've experienced, lots of pain, all sorts of different things, lots of sort of outbursts with emotion that is uncontrollable. And so these are the things that I'd like to talk about, because they can be very, very frightening when it happens. And, you know, it is not altogether blissful at all. So when it happened to me, I was about 35 when it happened, and it just blasted through my system in the form of 4 years of emotional crying, panic attacks that would start in my solar plexus and work like a vortex of energy that went all the way up through and straight out through my crown chakra. That happened for a good 4 years, and so they were those energy vortices that actually went through my body and up through the crown would happen sometimes up to 10 times a day, which would leave me very depleted, and because they came across as panic attacks, because, you know, intense fear, like driving up through your physical body, and it is so intense that it went on for 4 years. And a lot of the time I would work as a nurse and have to go into a pan room and have a bit of a cry and then come out and still keep working. And, you know, while I'm having panic attacks, while I just keep working, it was the only thing that got me through, because I would have uncontrollable urges sometimes to throw myself in front of trucks. Because, you know, that's just how it represented. You know, it was just a clearing of probably massive amounts of past lives and traumas and all sorts of things that are held in our mental, emotional and physical bodies. So it represents in such a way that is needed to clear those traumas and past lives and things from the spiritual and physical body. Most of the information that I found years ago was very difficult in those days to find anything. The internet wasn't huge back then, and I had no real understanding of what was going on. I had no understanding of any Eastern religions, so I didn't know. And you know, a lot of the Eastern religions, even now, I can go through and find a lot of their Kundalini information, and it still just talks about this energy that flies all the way up in an instant and you're totally enlightened. And it's like, well, that's not how it happens. That's not how it happened to me. But I know that what I'm experiencing is what they're talking about. So I found a woman called Collie, who had a spontaneous Kundalini event many years ago that was for her quite violent. And sometimes it can be extremely violent, which it has been for me over the years. She has written a huge amount about her own journey, which is just the most amazing account of all that's ever happened to her and why. And she has many books now on the situation, and also a lot of the Ascension symptoms that you read about and that you see online are derived from her her books and her knowledge of the Kundalini Rising that she went through. She unfortunately passed away not long ago, and she has stated, and you know, and I know myself many times, that death is a very, very, very near, a near thing all of the time when you go through some of these really violent symptoms. And there have been, you know, the energy is so profound and so intense that people have actually lost their lives while experiencing these symptoms. And if the energy does get blocked in a particular chakra, it can cause such suffering, and physical and psychological suffering that is, that I've read about some people that have actually gone through that. And I don't know how they've managed to stay alive, because it is sometimes it's so intense. In a way, even though a lot of mine have been violent, there have been many near-death experiences and things like that. For me, it's, you know, I've still managed to clear a lot of it. And I guess once it does clear, you get insights that you're able to sort of work with, which is a really handy thing in the end, because you know, there is nobody that can help you. I've been to doctors, and I've been to you know, because I've had a lot of physical symptoms as well, and I have been checked out by doctors, and they can never usually find anything, and also psychologists, because you know, I've had doctors who think that I'm completely mad send me to psychologists. You know, and luckily once upon a time I did find a psychologist who was amazing, and as soon as I told him, I said, look, have you heard of Kundalini? He said, yes, I'm a Buddhist. I spoke to him about all of my symptoms, about everything that actually went on, and he was incredible, because he never judged me, he never negated anything that I said. When he said, yes, I've heard of this, and he was amazing. But I said to him, you know, like, are there other psychologists or counselors that think like you? And he said, no one. You know, like, I was very lucky to find him, and he helped me a lot. So if you can find someone that can help with these symptoms, and not, because you do really sometimes think you're going mad. And so to have someone negate what you actually are experiencing is quite disheartening, and doesn't help you at all. So anyway, I will go through some of the symptoms that I have found, and that Collie has listed. She has many, many symptoms that she experienced, and but I will not talk about all of those. I will list a lot of them in there. A lot of the symptoms that I had were at first emotional and sometimes physical, and it's ongoing. I mean, it does not ever really ever stop, even though it has gotten easier over the years, and because a lot of my fear has disappeared, and I have no fear of death or dying at all anymore, because I've been through so much of it anyway, in my own in my own self that it's I'm able to sort of like understand what's going on, and have now sort of been able to let go a lot of the time. So and I do remember one time speaking to a man. He was a friend of my cousin's actually, but I remember many years ago being introduced to a man who has his own Kundalini studio, Kundalini yoga studio in Melbourne. And I remember speaking to him quite a few years ago, and he had actually, now this man promotes, Kundalini, the rising of Kundalini through his yoga that he does. He himself had never experienced any form of Kundalini rising, and I was the only person that he had ever met that had actually had a full-blown Kundalini rising experience. And I just said to him, it's promoted as being a wonderful, blissful experience, that it's all one thing you go through, and it's all, I said, that's all wonderful. I said, and it's blissful and perfect, and you're totally enlightened. I said, that's not how it is. And I said, if you understood what it was that you had to go through and what someone had to go through, I said, you would probably think twice about, getting anybody to do this sort of work if they're not ready. Because if you're not ready and that energy does become blocked, it can cause huge amounts of suffering in a person. And so I don't know, I've never really thought about doing the whole Kundalini yoga thing. Sometimes they've said that it can, calm down the symptoms. In my experience with yoga, which I do a lot of yoga these days, but it does help in the fact that it does release energy. So, it can actually help in that way. So without further ado, we shall go into some of the symptoms of the Kundalini Rising. And what a lot of Ascension symptoms that people are having right now. There are so many different symptoms that, that come across as physical, which if you are going through any sort of spiritual awakening at all, you will discover that these symptoms are actually your soul and your spirit trying to get you to see and to experience your true self of who you are. Anyway, so I shall go through some of these symptoms, and because a lot of these I went through, but of course there are so many of them. You can check out some of the Eastern religions too about Kundalini. I didn't find them terribly useful because I'm a Western woman living in a Western world, and I found that it didn't really explain a lot of what was happening with me. And so I was very lucky that I found Collie. So anyway, I shall go through these symptoms, and we'll see if any of them relate to what you're experiencing as well. Now, I will say too, if you are experiencing any sort of physical symptoms, and it is always a really good idea to get checked out physically by a doctor to ensure, and have tests to ensure that what you're experiencing is part of the Kundalini experience. I have in the past gone to doctors for things like chest pain and those sorts of things, just to make sure, and to make sure that I was okay. So I'll get into these symptoms. So one of the symptoms that is always ongoing, sometimes I will get lots of tremors with shaking, sometimes rhythmic jerking and spasmodic sometimes graceful movements that are autonomic. It's nothing that I have any real control over. And these are called kriyas and mudras in the Eastern religions. So there will be times when I'm in bed at night. A lot of the times I experience Kundalini symptoms at night, and which can also be quite frightening too. But over the years, I've gotten used to it, and I will literally go into fetal positions, and then my body will start to move in such a way that I just have to go with it. And sometimes I will get up and be on all fours and do, you know, figures of 8, you know, so many strange different movements. Nausea, which is a big one, dizziness, vomiting, diarrhea that can sometimes last for hours up to sometimes days. And then they just vanish, you know, that sort of thing. And I will tell you, when you actually are experiencing a lot of these symptoms, there is kind of like a different kind of, when you're experiencing these physical symptoms, there is kind of like this, also a buzz, like a buzz, an electrical sort of feeling that you can feel around it. It's a strange feeling. And sometimes unusual involuntary breathing patterns, with sometimes a cessation of breath. Quite often I will be doing something and then my breathing will just change autonomically. There is nothing I can do about that, and I just go with it. And sometimes I will let out a breath and then not actually take a breath. And it sort of like will do this sort of thing on its own. And neither do I need to take a breath. It's very interesting how it just brings you into the now moment when that happens. And I mean, it's only for very short periods of time, but it can sometimes be a little bit disconcerting when your breathing pattern starts to change and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. That is actually called as automatic pranayama when that happens. Loss of hair, that can happen as well. Sometimes the energies are so intense that they can actually, you can lose your hair. You can get massive headaches. Also skin cracking, peeling, nosebleeds for no reason, headaches for no reason, and an increase in weight that you can do nothing about, no matter what you do. Doesn't matter how much you exercise, how much you diet. If you are meant to keep the weight on for whatever reason, then that's exactly what has to happen, and you just have to live with that. Sensations of heaviness in the body. Sometimes you can be walking and like feel so heavy, like you're just dragging your feet all of the time. Also, too, a lot of the time I get drops in blood sugar when, sometimes I will have to eat every 20 minutes because my blood sugar will just go shooting down, which will then bring on feelings of dizziness, nausea, and, you can sometimes vomit too for no reason. Sometimes a lot of pain can be felt in the sacral chakras and the solar plexus chakra while that is actually clearing out, and it can represent as a lot of pain that can last either a few hours or a few days. And also too, I remember once, which was very, very painful, because a lot of the time they actually say in these Eastern religions that the Kundalini energy is like represented as a snake, a coiled snake that sits at the bottom of your spine. And when that is released to clear all of that, and sometimes it can actually clear and run all the way up your spine. Now, quite often, sometimes when this occurs, you can actually get popping, cracking, or crackling, a crackling sound. And also, too, it has been known to, when it drives straight up your spine, it can blow out and dislodge a disc. Like it can just, it has done that. In fact, Collie talks about that a lot, about how it can, she was prostrate on her bed for like a long time while she waited for her disc to sort of mend from Kundalini. I have had it happen where the Kundalini has risen and like a snake and whipped like a snake breathing fire, whipped across my back for hours and hours and hours on end in excruciating pain, only to, after like 20 hours of that, be in total bliss and euphoria for at least a day. I've also experienced times where I have been asleep and then been in a space of complete awareness in the void, where I don't breathe, I do not need to breathe, my heart has stopped, energy rises up in here, and then it's about to go out, and then my adrenal glands pump out adrenaline and I'm dragged back into my body. That sort of thing has happened, which is part of the Kundalini as well, energy. Also to feelings of the sensation, which is quite frightening, of being like just disintegrating into nothing, and feelings of like intense heat where you feel like you're about to combust. That has happened to me on a number of occasions, which is very frightening because you feel like you're basically going to die. And those sorts of things can happen. Feelings of extreme body weakness and tiredness and exhaustion, that has been happening for me quite a lot recently. Many years ago, I remember, when this started, I had experienced things like insomnia, massive amounts of insomnia, where I didn't sleep sometimes for days. And I would maybe get maybe 1 hour a night, and I would just have to go, and I would be buzzing for days and days and days on end. It was, horrendous, but that went on for a good 2 to 4 years. And so it would come in, but then there are also other really amazing sort of things that happen, like, you start to get out of body experiences, but also then you also start to come across other sort of paranormal type experiences too, which you've never ever come across before. I've come across archangels, the Christ-like energies, ETs, people that have passed over, that sort of thing. Whereas once upon a time I never had any inkling of that sort of thing at all. I didn't know about any of those sorts of things. So those sorts of things are also part of the Kundalini Rising, where you're shifting and moving blockages of, so that, of that awareness of other worlds and other beings and other entities. What else have I got here? Headaches, gagging, swallowing difficulty sometimes, not able to sort of, sometimes swallowing can be quite difficult when the throat chakra is being activated. Swirling, spinning, that sort of thing happens quite a lot, and sometimes I will actually be shifted, feel like I'm being shifted out of my body and then brought back in, and the Merkaba that just spins and spins and spins and spins and spins. Heart palpitations, that happens fairly regularly. Quite often too, I have actually been checked at the doctor for that. So it's good for these things, if you do get these symptoms, to get checked out to make sure that it is not a physical complaint. Another thing that has happened to me before too, which has been really disconcerting, is the fact that I have had sensations of like I've got gingivitis and that my teeth are all going to fall out. I remember once, it was so excruciating and really worrying for about 3 days, because I thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose all my teeth, what's going on, and diagnosed myself with gingivitis. I went to the dentist thinking that's what they're going to say, that, I've got some horrible disease. They looked at my teeth and looked at my gums and said there was absolutely nothing wrong, that I didn't need anything done to my teeth and my gums were fine. And then about a day later, of course, those symptoms receded, and I've not had any symptoms since. So, very strange. So there are many other symptoms that I can, those feelings of course, depression, anxiety, massive amounts of anxiety, as I've said before. What else? Oh, look, they're ongoing, and quite a lot of the time I can say, oh, that's because what's going on at the moment, and it's another Kundalini symptom. But right now it seems that for me, I do not, because I've done so much of this clearing over the last 22 years, that it's actually not quite as violent as it used to be. I've experienced a lot of near-death experiences and feelings of being all at one with all that is, that's an amazing Kundalini experience. But there are some amazing kind of experiences, as well as the very violently fearful ones and the very painful ones. But I've looked at it over the years, and I've seen myself grow into someone that I could never have been without this experience. So I thank God for it every day, even though it sometimes can be quite difficult. I'm a lot more in tune with myself, a lot more in tune with others and the world around me because of it. Unfortunately, sometimes the emotional responses from Kundalini can be quite disconcerting, even for me. There's a lot of confusion because it's clearing out so much of those emotions that you don't actually have really any control over what comes out, which is been a little bit kind of hard to deal with sometimes, and hard for others to deal with as well. But at the end of the day, it's all about clearing and clearing out all of these emotions that have become stuck in our emotional bodies and other parts of our spiritual bodies. So it can be quite difficult sometimes to navigate these energies, and that is why I'm so lucky that I found someone like Collie to help me over the years, because it was very frightening. There was no one that was going through the same thing that I was going through. I had no one to talk to about it at all. I think if you were part of some of those Eastern religions, you might have some sort of understanding, but I found it very difficult to. And my partner at the time, he found it also quite difficult, and my children. And eventually I had to sort of go and live on my own so that I could deal with a lot of what was going on. But at the end of the day, it's still probably one of the greatest experiences of my whole entire life. And I'm so glad that I, found that part of all that is God within me, which that is what I believe is the driving force of it all anyway. So I hope that helps, and what I will do is put some information from Collie in the description below, and if you have any problems at all, please do not hesitate to contact me at sleepywisdom.com, and I'll leave my email link down below as well, which is sleepywisdom@hotmail.com. Okay, thank you guys, and I'll see you again another day.